In this video, I'm going to show you how to take your weaving off of your loom. So first you'll need to turn your cardboard over onto the back and take off any tape that you have holding down your warp strings. Then you'll want to cut right through the middle of the strings on the back. Next I'm going to start removing these strings 2 by 2. So I'll take this first set of strings and I'm just going to tie them together. Before I tie off any other warp strings, I want to make sure I focus on the strings that are directly opposite of the one I just tied off. That way it'll stay secure as I move along. Here I've made it to my last 2 sets of strings. I'm going to tie these 2 off, and I want to show you a different way you can tie these into a knot. Rather than twisting them together to tie a knot, you can tie them separately and it will create just a different way of the strings fraying out at the end. Once you've finished tying those off and you've removed it from the loom, you might want to cut off some of the tassels to trim them down shorter. Just make sure you don't trim them too close to the knot, otherwise you risk the weaving coming unraveled. Here's another weaving I have that's ready to come off the loom. You'll notice that these warp strings are closer together. I'm going to take this off a little bit differently. I know some people prefer this method where you just cut the strings pairs at a time rather than cutting all at once. That way you don't risk things kind of coming undone. It stays a little bit more secure, especially if it's something you're going to have to leave and come back to. Another thing I want to point out about this weaving in particular is that you'll notice there are an odd number of warp strings, so I can't pair these 2 together without leaving one hanging behind. So instead of leaving that last one hanging, I'm just going to tie all 3 of them together so that they're secure. Your finished weavings can be used different ways. It could be a coaster, maybe you want to make it into a bracelet depending on the proportions. In this case, I'm going to show you how to make it into a wall hanging. So here I have a wooden dowel. You could use a twig or a pencil. I'm going to place my dowel on one side of my weaving where I have strings hanging off, and I'll just use those strings to secure the weaving to the dowel. You'll notice I'm tugging the knots onto one side because when I flip it over, I don't want those knots to be seen. So I'm just trying to tuck them close to the weaving so that when I flip it over, I won't have any knots or loose ends showing. I want to make sure I trim off these long strings just so they don't get in the way. And then I'll finish the process by adding a string that this can hang on. I'm going to trim these tassels to the length that I like. And then something to consider, if you want to add a little bit more volume to your tassels, you can unravel the thread that you have, and that will kind of fluff them out and give it a little bit more volume. Here's another example I have. The tassels are all finished. I fluffed them out. I like the way it fills in the space a little bit more. And this weaving is ready to hang on the wall.